So Man United lost to Newcastle in an incredibly disappointing performance away from home today, and I was in the midst of making a tactical analysis of that game when I checked Twitter to find out that Todd Boehly has just sacked Graham Potter after just 31 games in charge of Chelsea. And of course, we've had a history of covering Potter's games on this channel, so I had to scrap everything and get this video out as soon as possible. And I'm sure most Chelsea fans are glad to see this happen. In fact, I did a poll on my channel yesterday after the Villa 2-0 loss asking if Potter should be sacked, and about 64% of 1,600 people said that he should go. And I suppose with Todd Boehly, it's ask and he shall deliver, because Chelsea fans have been asking this for a while, and guess what? 7 months in, he's gone. Look, straight out of the gate, I have to acknowledge that I have defended Potter to some extent because of the good things I've seen in his tactics and how against Leeds, Dortmund, Leicester, and Everton, 4 out of the last 5 games, I saw some really good football. And all I was trying to suggest when I analyzed those games is that Potter should get some time because he's dealing with a lot of change and a lot of external factors that were out of his control. But am I really surprised that he got the sack? Absolutely not. Football is a results-based business at the end of the day, and a famous quote from John Maynard Keynes comes to mind. The markets can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. And those of you that work in finance or invest in stocks might have heard this before, and in simple terms, it means that you can be right about a stock and bet on it to go up or down, and the market will still keep going against you till you have no money left to bet with. And in Potter's case, even though the underlying numbers were good and he was starting to get his tactics right and playing some good football, the results kept going against him. So ultimately, the natural conclusion to this project was that he was going to get the sack. So we're here today to analyze what went wrong for Potter in his 7 months in charge of Chelsea, the financial implications of him getting sacked, and what this means for Chelsea moving forward. As always, please drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy, and don't forget to turn on your bell notifications to never miss out on content just like this. So here is Chelsea's complete record under Graham Potter in all competitions since he took over in September 2022. In 31 games, he's had 12 wins, 8 draws, and 11 losses, which is a 39% win rate. And here is Chelsea's record in the Premier League only since he took over, where in 22 games, he's had 7 wins, 7 draws, and 8 losses, which is a 32% win rate. I'm not here to tell you that that's good enough. In fact, that's a terrible record. But just for a few seconds, I want you guys to look at 2 sets of stats here. Chelsea scored 21 goals from about 29 XG in the Premier League, and they conceded 21 goals from 27 XG against. And that tells me 2 things. 1, Chelsea were pretty good defensively, at least in the Premier League, as they outperformed their XG against. And 2, Chelsea were terrible offensively as they underperformed their own XG massively. And I know that XG isn't everything, and that XG doesn't win you games, but it does mean that the Chelsea system was creating more chances than they were converting into goals. Had they scored just 29 or 30 goals like their XG suggests, they could have had 3 or 4 more wins in those 21 Premier League games. And we can talk about specific games instead of an overall picture, because the first game against Fulham in January, which they lost 2-1, they created 4 big chances with 2 XG, and Felix himself could have scored 2 goals before being sent off on his debut. Then they had 3 draws against Liverpool, Fulham, and West Ham in January and February, where they had more possession and higher XG than all those teams. They could have easily won 2 out of those 3 games if they had scored more than just 1 goal from the 4.27 XG they created in those 3 games combined. And then you also have the Southampton game where you lost to the Ward-Prowse free kick, and the Villa game yesterday where they didn't take their chances like I described in the tactical analysis of that game. So what does this mean? I'm not saying that having 3 or 4 more wins would make Potter the right man for the job in the long term, but it would have at least kept him in the job till the end of the season. And in the big scheme of things, I'm not even saying that scoring 30 goals from 28 or 29 XG is good enough for a team the stature of Chelsea. A good team under a good manager probably scores and creates more than that in 22 games. But outside of the poor finishing that Potter has had to deal with, there have been several other mitigating factors like betting in 7 new players from the January transfer window and injuries to at least 11 first-team players during his tenure as Chelsea boss. And when you combine all of these factors with the fact that Potter was signed mid-season, it meant that he didn't have a preseason and that he had to deploy his system onto his players during midweek trainings for the most part. So when you take a step back and look at all of these issues in the big picture, it's easy to have a little sympathy for Graham Potter. Not that I'm saying any Chelsea fan should be shedding a tear for Potter getting sacked, but maybe you can understand why I was looking for the positives in my tactical analysis when I was analyzing Chelsea games, and why I thought that he needs some more time to turn things around. Right now, Chelsea are stuck in a really weird predicament because there are 10 games left in the season, and you guys aren't going to get top 4 and definitely not going to get relegated either. The season is pretty much over outside of the quarterfinals of the Champions League, and with either no manager for that game or a brand new manager, I don't think anyone is expecting Chelsea to beat Real Madrid. So let's talk about the financial implications of this sacking and who could come in next. So Todd, Boehly & Co. signed Graham Potter as Chelsea boss on September 8th last year on a 5-year deal that ran through till 2027. And he was rumored to be making between 10 to 12 million pounds per season, which is between 200 and 250 grand per week. And by sacking him just after 7 months in charge, Chelsea will probably have to pay out between 44 to 52 million pounds to void his contract. So that potentially has huge implications for the club from a financial fair play perspective, because they were already walking a thin line with FFP despite giving the new signings 7 and 8 and 10-year contracts. So does this mean that Chelsea will struggle to sign someone like Osimhen in the summer, because he's probably going to cost between 120 and 150 million? From my estimation, Chelsea will have 35 players on the books going into the summer transfer window, and this includes 4 goalkeepers, 11 defenders, 8 midfielders, and 12 forwards. And both the Premier League and Champions League only allow 25 players to be registered per team, which means you either have to sell or bench at least 10 of these 35 players next season. And if we're talking about bringing new signings in on top of these 35 players, that means you have to sell or bench more than just 10 players. So Chelsea have a massive job on their hands this summer, including getting rid of Lukaku, Aubameyang, Ziyech, and Pulisic, and also the likes of Loftus-Cheek and Callum Hudson-Odoi. And this is where some of the issues start, because Aubameyang and Pulisic have just 1 year left on their deal, so you're unlikely to get a lot of money from them. And Lukaku and Ziyech will both be 30 plus and unwanted by Chelsea, so you're likely not going to get a lot of money for them either. N'Golo Kante is yet another problem because his contract expires this summer, so you could say relatively easy to get rid of him, but arguably midfield is the area where you're desperate for players because you're only playing with Enzo and Kovacic right now. So with all these issues in terms of raising new funds and getting even in terms of FFP and potentially signing new players, Chelsea and Todd Boehly have just added another expensive expenditure by sacking Graham Potter. Now, I want you guys to think through this and get in the comments below as Chelsea fans, what are your thoughts on this in terms of FFP and in terms of what money will be available in the summer as we move on to potential managerial replacements for Graham Potter. So the rumors are that Chelsea are linked with 4 potential managers at this time, with Julian Nagelsmann, who's number 1 on the list, Mauricio Pochettino, who's number 2 on the list since they were already looking at him before they signed Potter, and then we have Zidane and Luis Enrique, who are the 3rd and 4th options. Now, most Chelsea fans will probably want to get Nagelsmann in charge since he's available after being sacked by Bayern. What do you guys think about him? He's definitely a great young coach at just 35 years old, and he has been touted as the next big thing in European football for quite some time. But, and it's a big but, he got sacked by Bayern Munich after just 2 seasons, after winning the Bundesliga in his first season and 2 DFL Super Cups, which is just a one-off game played between the winner of the Bundesliga and the DFB Pokal. So really, he's just won the Bundesliga with Bayern Munich, which, let's be honest, most managers can do with that team in the Bundesliga. I mean, the last time they lost it was in the 2011-2012 season when Klopp was managing Dortmund over 10 years ago. And Oliver Kahn, who's the CEO of Bayern Munich, said that they sacked Nagelsmann because the team played less successfully and less attractively since the World Cup. Now, if I was a Chelsea fan, I'd honestly be laughing right now, because if you don't laugh, you're gonna cry. Your club, under Todd Boehly, definitely sacked Thomas Tuchel too soon to sign Graham Potter. And now, just 7 months later, you've sacked Graham Potter too soon, and no matter how you feel about him, you must agree that Boehly could have waited till the end of the season to sack Potter, because let's face it, this season is already a wash. And now the front runner to replace Potter is a manager who arguably got sacked too soon by Bayern Munich in Nagelsmann, who's been already replaced by Tuchel, who you guys sacked too soon. So what the hell is going on? Chelsea fans, look, I'm definitely happy that you guys got what you wanted, because it was clear that you weren't happy with the Potter project so far, and rightfully so. Ultimately, the club belongs to the fans and they should get what they want. But how do you feel about the Boehly ownership right now? Are you having questions in your mind? How do you feel about it moving forward? So far, in less than a season, they seem to have gotten the sacking of Tuchel wrong, the appointment and sacking of Potter wrong. They've arguably spent too much too soon on some players. Like, honestly, I was totally fine with Enzo and Mudryk as signings, because maybe you don't get those players if you wait till the summer. But the rest of the signings were probably done a bit haphazardly. And now they're looking for a third manager under their ownership, despite promising to do things differently after Roman Abramovich left. Look, I'm definitely going to be glued to my screen to see what happens with Chelsea over the coming weeks and months, because Chelsea is definitely the most interesting club in Europe right now. Let's hope for your sake that they get the next managerial appointment right, because this ownership group needs to show that they have what it takes to run a huge club like Chelsea. Thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.